Thanks, Pam. While he's getting this queued up, I do have a little beef, Pam, and since no one else wants to listen to me, I'm going to give it to you. And those of you who know me and my family, I'm come from a large family. I'm the seventh of 7 children. And so the whole time growing up, I was the tag along, right? I was the one that, got dropped off at grandma's while the rest of the family went to the state fair or 4-H. And so today was my moment in the sun, right? I get to come here back to my alma mater and present. And where do they put me? Yep. Dead bleeping last, Pam. Here it is. All right, so here we go. So if nothing else, I was a fighter, right? And so we'll fight on. So tell you a little bit about who we are, and thank you for the introduction. And we're a multifaceted operation. So again, I'm part of a large family operation. We have 11 family members that work for us full-time between our farm, our cheese factory, and our biodigester system. And they're 3 separate LLCs, but we run, obviously, they're all connected, which is what we're going to talk about today. And on the farm side, we have a 2,100 cow dairy. We raise our 1,300 head of young stock to go with that. And we farm 3,500 acres of corn, alfalfa, grass, hay, wheat, soybeans, and some pasture. So a lot of different cropping. And all of that, except for the wheat grain, except for the tiny little seeds, all of the rest of that is harvested and fed back through the herd. So we always say we don't grow crops, we grow feed. On the cheese side, we produce all fresh cheeses, fresh mozzarella in various sizes, shapes, and packages. We have mascarpone, which is similar to a cream cheese, an application, Oaxaca-style string cheese that's sold into the Hispanic market. And then we do a very small amount of cheese curds for the local market. Our digester, we convert manure, cheese whey, and some waste sunflower oil that gets brought in. We convert that into electricity, heat. I'm going to move on to the next slide now, because I can show you what it is instead of tell you. Electricity, heat off the engine that turns the generator, cow bedding, and fertilizer. And so one of the things that we have here is with the digester and with the system we have, there's really no place to stop and start each one. We can't just separate the farm and say this is that, or then it's the cheese and the digester. It's a continual loop. And so we actually had some graphics design that puts the cow right in the center. We always have the cow center. And so we use her milk to make cheese, and then the manure goes in the digester along with the cheese whey. We produce the products down below, with the one on the left being fertilizer. It goes back to the cropland and grows our next year's crops. So some of the synergies that we have, I'm looking up because I don't, here we go. Yes. Some of the synergies we have are, we pump milk directly to the cheese plant. And how this comes into play with Climate Smart, that's about 700 and, what did I have here? I'll give you the number later. About 750 truckloads of milk a year that never get wheels under it, don't burn any diesel fuel, they go directly into the cheese plant. We feed dried whey back to the cattle in the digester, and even the very small portion that we feed back to the cattle would equate to about 120 semi-tanker loads a year. Bedding, we generate our own bedding by separating the digested manure. We dry it using biogas, so we're not bringing in those outside nutrients and loading our soil with extra nutrients. And that's about the equivalent of about 250 truckloads a year. So that's where the climate part comes in, right? A lot of what I'm telling you, we do because it makes sense to us as farmers, right? As farmers or as practitioners, cheese makers, what makes sense, what's going to work, what's kind of a clean, simple way of doing it. Climate Smart never heard the term until Paul invited me to speak. So, but this is where I'm relating the fact. We offset our electric needs on the farm. We produce just about enough electricity that offsets everything we would use to power our farm. The bedding, and then the excess heat comes off the engine. We actually have hot water lines running underneath ground where we heat our farm shop, office, farmhouse, and we also have the ability to dispose of cheese waste because we have farmland. So some of the things that we do on the farm, farm smart practices. So what I'm gonna do is break down each of our different operations and say just specific things. All of it falls in line with, Michelle, I've known for a long time. We didn't collaborate on our talks, but he had about 5 of his slides that we're gonna show you in practice what's going on. John and Wade, a lot of what really jives. So we use a digested manure as plant-friendly fertilizer. Minimum tillage, cover crops, GMO technology. Some of this stuff goes back to the early days of this university, right? What GMO technology allowed us to do was reinvent it, right? We were able to go back to some cover crops and do some of those things because now we have seeds that have technology in them to allow us to have that cover crop in place until the day we plant the seed. Limited shrink of harvested forage. I'll explain a little bit more. Genomic testing for cow performance. That's a huge thing, huge strides in genetic ability of cows to produce whatever it is. More components, better quality milk, higher reproductive efficiencies. I'll get into that in great detail. And then one of the things that I think is the greatest story not told right now in animal agriculture is our use of byproducts or co-products. In this case, brewer's grain, corn gluten feed, whole cotton seeds, distiller grain, all the stuff that is left over after we make our food, right? Everything we eat has a husk, a peel, a core, a rind, right? But when we go through the buffet here, that's all gone, right? A lot of it was gone back at the processing plant. Where's that go? Right? If we feed it to a ruminant animal, we get a lot of horsepower out of it. We get a lot of benefit. And it doesn't end up in the landfill generating methane. Just in our farm alone, I did the math one day and I had to do it 3 times. I mean, no, that can't be right. 10,000 tons just on our farm alone. Brewer's grain from Milwaukee, corn gluten feed from Chicago, right? Cotton seeds come from a long way, but the others is somewhat local. So this is some of the technology on the land, planting into a green crop, right? That green crop is still undergoing photosynthesis, right? Taking the carbon down in the soil. Applying nutrients to growing crops, same thing. Having crops in that field, because it's digested, we don't have to worry about burning the crop with the nitrogen from the manure in here. So we're applying here. This field on my left is actually a field that was already planted. So we planted in the green cover. We're coming and just dribble barring. That's not injecting, just dribble barring a small amount of digested manure over that field. And here we're doing the same thing with an alfalfa field after one of the 4 harvests. So about twice a year, typically 2 cuttings, we can get some of that out. All under the guidelines of our nutrient management plan. Talked about shrink on forages. Big deal, really big deal, both economically and for the environment. So using inoculants, harvesting at the right moisture, packing. This is on top of one of our bunkers, and I like it because you can see the tire tracks, right? Tight, tight, tight. All the plastic, the tire-to-tire storage. We measure our shrink. Shrink is anything that you harvest that the cow doesn't eat, right? And there's about 4% of what you harvest that the bacteria that are producing the lactic acid, they consume something, right, John? So they consume about 4. And so a really good goal is 8% shrink on a bunker of corn silage or a bunker of forage. The industry standard is kind of 12. So if we went from 8 to 12 by not doing some of these things, by just kind of doing an average job on 2,500 acres of forage, that would be pretty close to 100 acres equivalent. 100 acres of forage, if we didn't do this right, that would literally go up as shrink. We'd never feed it. We'd go through all the work, all the inputs that it took to grow that crop, and the cow never ate it. This is something that's really cool, is genomic advancement and using genomic tests in improving genetic advancement on our herd. So if you, I think there's a point around here, but it doesn't matter. The top line where it shows the best, we took 484 animals. This is from Zoetis. Broke them into quartiles. Top being where it says the best and the worst based on their genomic predicted transmitting ability of milk. So this is them measuring based on phenotypic data for the last 50 years of AI breeding. And the number up above is basically saying the cows in that top group would produce 1,586 more pounds of milk in their first lactation than the breed average, okay? And even down below, the worst quartile is still 144. They're still better than the breed average. But look at the actual 305-day mature equivalent is what that stands for, milk production. So they take these young cows and they put it in a formula that says, if they were mature cows, this is what they would produce. The top difference between the top quartile and the bottom quartile is 6,400 pounds of milk, right? Standardized milk. On that group of 121 cows, that equals about 9 semi-tankers of milk. So by using genomic data, now we have some good information to make our next decision, right? On who are the parents of the next generation of cows. And in our case, we would use sexed female semen on the top quartile, probably the top half, but a lot of it gets used in the heifers too. In the bottom 2 quartiles, and as we get older cows, even more, would get bred to a beef bull. So we heard earlier about, right? Those animals are going to be more feed efficient because they were bred to produce beef. So we're benefiting the environment by having cows that produce more milk. And these are standing in the same barn. All these cows are in the same barn, same pens, right? Look at the difference just based on genetics. I never would have believed, obviously, you believe, it's science, yeah, but when you see it in your own cows, wow. Then you combine the genetic advancement with all the good things that we learn here at the University of Wisconsin in 4-H and from our neighbors about, heat abatement and good ventilation and comfortable stalls and all the things, the cow comfort issues. And actually, in our herd, these cows outperform their expected deviation. They perform with the good care and with by raising the glass ceiling on them, they blow right through it, and they actually outperform what's expected genetically. Who was it that talked about the older cows? You, Michelle? No. I didn't even talk to him before this. So this shows genomic measurement based on dairy wellness profit dollars. So this is the Zoetis formula. And forget about how they put it, but they figure milk production, health traits, reproductive traits, metabolic disorders, the whole thing, foot health, lameness, the whole package. And you take first through 4th lactation, the top quartile and the bottom, and you look at herd removal rate. Now, part of the reason for the herd removal rate is some of these aren't performing very well, right? Mark Crave goes out and says, she goes, right? But if you look at it over time, especially when you get out here in the 4th lactation, so those are the heavy hitters, right? Those are the old grandma cows that come in. On our farm, that group would peak around 140 pounds of milk a day, right? So if we go from a 47% cull rate up to a 70 on that group of cows, just think how much milk we're missing out on. So that's what I get paid on, it's milk check. Then you look at the other side of it and say, we don't need a heifer to replace that cow, right? We didn't need to. So on our farm, we raise about 1,300 head of heifers for 2,100 cows. And historically, that used to be a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Guy had 50 cows, 50 heifers, right? So we're not having those heifers around consuming food, making manure, making work. So the statement right there in the highlighted green, they're bred to be healthier, live longer, and they're more profitable. And I would argue better for the environment. Then we take that cow and we upcycle these nutrients that I shared before, right? 10,000 tons. All the stuff that would otherwise get thrown away, we put it in a TMR with our homegrown forages, and we have a recipe for success. So this just popped up. My niece found this, and it's great because, it says the incredible cow. We take all the byproducts. We take our old forages. She produces milk, all the good things we do with it, the manure, power our homes, crops, the whole cycle. And even, the top one on there is almond hulls. I'm a proud graduate of UW in dairy science, and there used to be a class, I don't know if they still have it, Dairy Science 305 was lactation, right? And I took a lactation class, and there was never any almonds in that class. I don't know. I must have missed that day, I guess. But what happens to the almond hulls, right? When we make almond juice out of it? Well, if dollars to donuts, they're being fed to some dairy cows in the Central Valley in California, right? Byproduct feed. What we do in the cheese plant, not quite as dramatic, but one of the things just based on our model is it's fresh, real-time production. We make all fresh cheeses, so we're not aging them. We're not keeping them in a lot of refrigeration. Our fresh mozzarella has a 35-day shelf life, so it goes out, consumers eat it, it's all fresh. You see here our Oaxaca balls, and we do recycle our cooling water. We use a lot of water to cool the cheese after it's cooked and goes through the molder. We process our wastewater through our digester system, so it comes back to the farm side, and it goes in the manure stream, goes in the digester. That lactose is fermented and makes biogas. John already touched on it. Again, I didn't even talk to you, John, either, did I? But packaging is plastic is a big issue, right? Plastic plays a role because it's a very food safety, heavy, centric product, right? You have clean plastic, you put your food in it, you seal it. We have a lot of really good food because of that plastic, but we need to figure out a way to use less of it and find a replacement for it with the same or better results. Again, cooling water. This shows the fresh mozzarella Silliginis coming out, and they're about cherry size. And that's one of our main selling items is that type of cheese. And that goes into a cup with salt brine, and lid goes on, and out the door it goes. Some of the awards, some of the things that we're talking about today, we do because we have a branded product, right? We have a big family. We can spread out and do some different things. We also have a branded product that we can try to recapture some of that investment. And the digester system, again, I already touched on, we produce organic bedding. We hear facilities and offset electric needs. It's a big part of our marketing play too. Financially this year is a break even, and it's the first time since we've owned it that it actually broke even, right? A lot of parts, a lot of maintenance. This thing generates about $600,000 a year in gross income. It's about $100,000 of that is just repairs. You're using manure as a raw ingredient in a process, right? But we keep fixing, keep using it, and actually, this system was built by an outside investor. We've owned it for 6 years now, outright. But it's 15 years old, so we kept re-upping it. And we just did a major clean out. And actually cleaning out a manure digester is just as much fun as it sounds. So this is a slide that Brenda Murphy helped find. This shows the overall carbon progress that we've made in dairy. And this only goes back 10 years. This is 2007 to 17. But we're producing milk with 30% less water, 21% less land, 19% less greenhouse gas. In this slide, it tells us that U.S. dairy contributes 2% to U.S. GHG emissions. And same thing, on track for that 2050 benchmark. And to Wade's point, we have to do it with actual practices and not just say, hey, that's our goal. Yeah, me too, right? Big Me Too movement. And we'll be carbon neutral by 2050 also. So, and in this, these are real numbers, right? Not offsets, but did you look insets? I'm learning a lot of new words today. And insets, right? These are real numbers. This is not somebody paying us to do it, so Delta Airlines can keep flying, Taylor Swift can keep flying her private jet, right? It's supposed to be funny. That was a joke. Our crops are marketed through our cows, and the milk is marketed through our cheese. Having a branded product, as I said earlier, allows us to capture some of the value. We always talk about the 4 C's: crops to cows, cheese to the consumer. And the green energy logo we put on all of our Crave branded packages, and one of our customers puts it on theirs. We've had other customers that say, hey, I like that. So we do a fair amount of private label. And they'll say, hey, I like that logo. Wait, can we put that on our package? And we say, no, that's That's me. You know, that's Organic Valley's farmers doing that. That's Crave Brothers doing that. That's not you doing it. You can say you want to be that way. You figure out how to do it, right? And to wrap up the opportunities and concerns, I think one of the opportunities that we have, Wisconsin dairy's in a strong position. We have water that a lot of the rest of the country doesn't. We have feed, infrastructure, knowledge, even some of our branded products are proudly Wisconsin dairy or Organic Valley cheese. We have products that we can take to the market and say, hey, we're going to do this, but it's going to be different, right? We're not just drying powder here. We're making products that you want, and we're going to have this positive impact on the market. One of the first carbon markets, the first one that we'll be eligible for is eRINs. RIN stands for Renewable Identity Number, right? And until now, it's been for ethanol. So it's part of the new renewable fuel standard, and historically, it's been for ethanol. So let's say BP buys a lot of ethanol to blend in their fuels. Part of what they pay for are these RINs. And so now with the update of the renewable fuel standard, they're going to have them for electricity because now we're going to be powering more vehicles with electricity. So that should come back to us because we produce electricity in our digester. But until this point, we've never been able to capture any carbon market. One day, a month ago, my brother comes in my office with a magazine, Successful Farming. It's all about the carbon credits. And he holds it up and he goes, hey, do we get any of this? I said, I can't figure out a way to. But the eRINs, and that's just come out in the last month, 6 weeks. One of my concerns is that all this viable without government funding, right? To put legs under it. I think the funding is great for us to try things we've never tried before, right? And take the risk. But in the long term, for this to be viable, there has to be legs under it without government funding. Without that, we run the risk of overcapitalizing our farms, especially in the Midwest where we're already more capital intensive than, let's say, the Plain States or West Texas and that type of thing. So, and then once you capitalize it, now you're hooked to it, right? You have a tiger by the tail. Climate smart, I highlighted smart, is being careful that we're not the next buzzword or gimmick, right? So somebody asked me last night, what do farmers think of this, right? The farmers that I talk to say, okay, it was animal welfare, right? Then it was, non-GMO. Then it was, before that was no BST. Then non-GMO, now climate smart. And they say, okay, this is next, what's going to be in 5 years, right? So I look at it cautiously and say, whatever I do, I'm going to do it to the point that I really think we're going to be doing this for the long haul, right? And as an industry, how committed are we? Are we really willing to stand behind the technology that makes an impact? We had a product that if we enrolled every cow in the country on Posilac, per prescription, it was in the United States was the equivalent of removing 400,000 cars off the road. Old data, way back from the days of Monsanto. We shamed it out of existence, right? That was an animal welfare issue. But now that we're about climate, are we going to go back to it? Just a challenge, just a thought. And that's what the farmers say, right? That's what the farmers go out there and they say, what next? Right? What next? And that's it. Thank you.